Hello, and welcome to the first recorded episode for this entire sort of gang of people that we've got here. I'm just going to sort of basically introduce what we're doing and where we're coming from, because this is a bit of a weird experiment for all five of us. We have not done anything like this before, and it is bound to end up, I don't know, falling into some sort of chaos collectively, planned or otherwise. So we are a group of role players that have been playing collectively for quite a long time. I'd imagine some of us have probably lived, done at least half of our lifetimes have been as role players in one form or another, and we are also collectively a bunch of LARPers as well, which is more or less where we all know each other from. But we are going to do a actual play podcast of an AP for Pathfinder 2nd Edition called the Abomination Vaults, which I'm sure anybody that's watching this has seen tons of already. It's a very popular AP, and I am a addicted GM. I do a lot of games for some of the people that are here, and or gaming with one of the other players here, as they're my GM for another system, and pretty much most of us, apart from probably one, are 5th Ed players, and I dragged them all, possibly kicking and slightly screaming, into Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is probably at the moment one of my favourite systems. So just so you're aware, my name is Matt, generally speaking otherwise known as Big Grumpy Gamer on a number of different outlets. So I'm the only person that's going to introduce myself here. This is something that we didn't feel was necessary. We just want to make this as organic as we can and have this as sort of like 5 people playing a game as friends, just happening to record it at the same time, and we would see where that went. This wasn't really anything other. We've come up with a name. We're calling this a random encounter because basically it sounded kind of cool and there wasn't another channel with that name, so that stuck and that worked, and we've done a few bits and pieces to sort of move ourselves along into that line. But realistically, this is kind of just me dragging these 4 people into Pathfinder. And I will say we've got a few people. Just wave if you want to. JJ down in the bottom corner there. That's he's one of my previous Pathfinder 2nd Edition victims, along with Becki, who's just above there. That is my other slightly more learned Pathfinder 2nd Edition victims. But then we also have Dave over on my other side, and Lily down at the bottom, who are most definitely 5th Ed players. So this is entirely new for them. Mostly, we've done a couple of little practice games just to get people a few ideas and bits and pieces, and I am bombarding them with videos. By the way, they do not get away from this. There is learned explanations out there on YouTube, which they have already been attacked with. So basically, at this point, I'm going to kind of throw it open to the people that are here, just for a little bit of sort of light start before we get into things. What has been the sort of immediate feelings about Pathfinder 2nd Edition having come into it? And I'm going to target the people that have played it a bit longer first, and then I'm going to throw it to the newbies on my other side. So Becki and JJ, you've done this a little bit more. Let's be fair, you're already in an AP that I'm running Extinction Curse for you two. What are your feelings on 2nd Edition? And we'll start with JJ.
Okay. It's a lot more freeing in some ways and interestingly restrictive in others. Coming from the classic 5e background into Pathfinder, you've got the very strict, you move, and that's one option. Then you've got a main action, and then you've got the free action, or bonus action, sorry. And it's like you can do this, and then you can do this, and you can do this. You can do them in any order, but you only get one of each.
Yep.
Unless thing happens, like feats and all the rest of it. Whereas Pathfinder, massively freeing. You want to yeet yourselves 75 foot in a direction? Well, go for it. But that's all you're doing. Versus like an action and movement in 5th Ed. And then you get a bonus action at the end, which you can't do anything but a bonus action. So it's remarkably freeing in that way, but also you've then got the 1 or 2 or 3 costs that come with it. And I'll briefly throw that over to Becki, I think, because you've done magic in R1? In Extinction Curse?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you've
an
got,
Extinction Curse.
you have to juggle that a lot more than I do with my character.
That's a fair point. I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah, because most of my spells are like two actions, and then you kind of have to work out whether to stab something or move for a third. But normally I can't move far enough away, so then I'm trying to stab stuff, but I'm really rubbish at hitting things. So, or rubbish at hitting things with my spells, as Matt will probably mention.
On occasion, it has happened.
On occasions, unless it's a touch attack where it automatically does it.
Yeah. But then I make my save, so you get a bit disappointed there.
Yeah, I know. It's really disappointing.
Stop rolling.
But yeah, I think what you said, like the freeing, but the restrictions as well. I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. I think the thing I like about this is how free it is at character creation. This is the most scope I've ever had in creating a character, and I really like making really different ones and trying something different. So that's quite exciting.
The Paizo keep on adding more. There's the Secrets of Magic has just come out, just to date this video just a bit, because obviously it won't be released as soon as we've recorded. We're not streaming. We've decided to go down the pre-recorded, edited. Let's just make sure everything fits together nice and neat. And potentially, if I have the the capacity and I feel like it works, and bear with us, because this is new for us as well, just doing the recording stuff in general. I've done podcasts before, JG's done streaming before, Lily, I believe you've done streaming before, so we've kind of got bits of experience all over the place, but for the most part I'm actually recording and doing various screen stuff and so on and so forth, and so this is a new process on top of that. So I want to release it kind of as a podcast, but I do realize that a visual media moved over to podcast is not always going to work. So based on how I feel that we are translating the two things will depend on whether or not it's just a YouTube video release or if it becomes a podcast as well. Right, I'm going to throw things over to Dave, who is probably got the most experience and the most diverse RPG background out of all of us. What have you felt about second edition since I've kind of pulled you into this and we did the level 0 stuff before?
Well, I've not really done first edition Pathfinder, so I'm straight in at the deep end with second edition. And I think the biggest change is the whole Pathfinder second edition action economy. 3 actions, do as thou wilt, which it's a big departure from previous editions of D&D, and it's a bit of a departure from other RPGs, which is usually 2 actions or 2 half actions or a full action. So adding a third one does spice it up a bit and make you think a bit more tactically about what you want to do, and more importantly, supporting the rest of the party. That's one thing I'm looking forward to trying out in Anger.
And you've got the slightly more confusing and complicated character, perhaps because you're running an animal companion as well, which you've got a small mascot there for your animal companion, and various.
That's fine.
Yeah.
As far as I understand it, I just spend an action and go, "Oi, badger, go and bite him on the bottom."
Yeah, so it's quite. I mean, I find that quite nice. There's no initiative order for your animal companion, which there used to be in a lot of other editions. It is just you're spending actions to make it do 2 actions, which is quite, you can do it once a turn. It's quite a nice way of an elegant way of doing it.
And I'm very used to wrangling animal companions in games, because when I was running D&D 3.5 in my local groups, my wife's character would almost always have an animal companion of some sort. So it's pretty much second nature, and quite often the animal companion would end up tougher than the rest of the party combined.
Yes, that does tend to
happen. But that's 3.5 for you.
So The last person I'm coming to is Lily, and that's deliberate because Lily's actually my GM for a 5th Ed game. So Lily is directly involved in GMing a 5th Ed game for me at the moment. I'm now doing a Pathfinder 2nd for you. I think one of your big things was the character creation, wasn't it? And just how much.
Yeah. So obviously with D&D 5th Ed, you have an artificer or you have a mage, and obviously often within 2 or 3 levels you get to make, you know, a bit of a divergent choice. But once you're on that choice, it is very streamlined. This is what you get at each level. But with Pathfinder, obviously every level you have, it's much similar to D&D 3.5, where you can, you know, pick feats and pick abilities.
Yeah.
But you just have so much more things you can do with the character, and it feels like you don't get punished as much for branches out into other areas, especially with the archetypes, which is quite an interesting way of multi-classing.
Yeah, absolutely, and we will be looking at archetypes fairly soon because everybody's at level 1, but we should be leveling up fairly quickly. I'm going to do so for those of you that are involved with Pathfinder and have played it and have done Abomination Vaults. I'm going to do a kind of hybrid of the milestone and experience system. So there are points where I will level them up by default if they go beyond that point without dealing with everything behind them, just because I want to make sure that they're not hitting brick walls in this. This is Abomination Vaults, for those that don't know, is a mega dungeon. It is an old-fashioned grind through a dungeon. Now that term grind, I do realize, kind of puts people off. Grind just means fight after fight after fight, but in this one there is a lot of story interwoven between the various sorts of areas that they could get involved with as their characters. There's a lot of story that they can do back in the main town, which we will encounter fairly shortly, although the players already know of Otari and the town of Otari because we've done a couple of adventures which I wrote beforehand to allow them to do level 0 and effectively level 0 and a bit, because we did the apprenticing system to bring these characters up to the point where they're doing this adventure. We're also going to be using, and I'm going to just sort of list off a few things now because we're trying to make sure that, you know, we're showing what we're doing. We are using Foundry VTT, my personal favourite preference, certainly for Pathfinder 2nd edition. It's very, very good. We'll be using Sirenscape for a bit of music and a little bit of background. That is optional for the players. Some of them have chosen to do it, some of them haven't. Some of them have struggled with the download of the player because it is a bit weird and a bit awkward. But we've got music in here, and you'll hear that pipe through my system because, say, I'm doing a lot of the recording. We are using real dice as much as we can. And I say as much as we can because there will be a couple of instances where you will hear dice rolls done via Foundry, and that's mostly going to be for initiative rolls for these guys because it just handles it a little bit better. The only time, in my personal opinion, where it doesn't handle it very well is when you've got somebody scouting, because you've got to remember to put the +1 in after the fact. You can't just do it sort of built in automatically. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be trying to use dice as much as possible, real dice. We're going to be using the initiative in Foundry VTT. Foundry also, the screen that that YouTube will show is especially set up. One that I'm running up here, it's got something called auto center. So if you notice that when a player moves their tokens, all of a sudden the zoom goes out and it shifts around and all the rest of it, that's because handling all of the screens was just becoming too complicated. So this is one of the modules that you can get in here for doing this sort of thing. And I have to say, as a GM who loves tinkering with things, who loves messing around with his VTT and doing all manner of different stuff and putting virtual dice on when we're using virtual dice and all the rest of it, Foundry and the module community is amazing. So I just want to shout out to those and to Sirenscape just to sort of put a little bit on here. What do you guys think about starting the game, though?
Hell yeah.
Yeah?
Bring it
That's
on.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So let's have a little bit of music, shall we, for those of us that are listening to it, and just make sure that works. He says, and then it doesn't, of course.
Nope, I got it. I've got it.
You've got some? There we go. Brilliant. Okay. we focus in on a large coastal community town. We've seen this in a number of sort of shots and screens previously, small episodes, small series of like TV shows and things like that. If you can imagine this sort of episodic view of this town as it's grown and it's changed, and we've seen buildings be pulled down by mysterious events, collapse, and now contain small globes of light that bounce around this odd ruin. The town now views the building to be haunted and won't go anywhere near it. It's a bit of a strange town. Community is insular to a certain extent, but very much open to the business and trade that comes across the world to them. The night tonight is overcast and dark. The entire area shadowed by dark storm clouds above. At least it feels that way. We focus in on a very quaint and peculiar building to the north of the town. This is a strange building which seems to have standing stones erected around it, but on closer inspection it becomes clear that these are actually painted canvases. Within the windows of this strange store are trinkets and odd bits of fabric, bits and pieces that just sort of don't fit in any normal store. This is a curio store, and across on a simple sign it says Rin's Wonders. Rin is well known within the town. She's been here for just over 4 years. She set up this shop after a very strange set of events. And we focus in and we zoom down to the inside of this building. It's just an odd mismatch of random items, random relics and things that just don't fit anywhere. A table is sat in the middle with a deck of cards neatly arranged just near the middle of the table. As we move around the room, we get a faint outline of a tiefling girl. Blue hair, long curled horns, a hint ever so slightly of an elf. As we zoom around past her, up to her shoulder, we focus in as a hand appears on her shoulder. Again, delicate, feminine, and then a letter is dropped in front of the girl. Before we get to see any more, the camera moves back, pulls away, spins out of the building, and starts heading down the streets of this medieval town until it reaches the outside of a large tavern. The bar is named the Rowdy Rockfish. And while we kind of get this feeling of a slightly dilapidated and broken down building, as we move closer we get lovely smells of fresh cooked fish, pies, food, and there's no rowdiness to this tavern. As the door swings open and the light pours out, we have a silhouette once more of a dwarf with a small animal stood by the side of him. The dwarf is holding a drink, merrily having his evening, but in his other hand we see an envelope. Again, before we get to focus too much on this, we spin out from away from the bar, down the streets, and we see a massive cathedral. Huge building, blue, circular domed roofs, backed into a cliffside, and we spin in through the building. Stained glass windows circle this entire area. We spin away and we move to the front of this building, and we see a large shrine to Sarenrae. Massive, this whole wonderful thing. There are alcoves all over the place with other small well-known gods. Gozra and Eristal, Caden Kalen, in fact, has his own shrine here. But we move through past all of these well-known shrines to a very small shrine at the back. knelt down in front of the shrine is a young woman, clad in armor, shield on her back, sword in front of her, knelt praying at a very small shrine. The shrine is odd, almost as if no one else uses this shrine. But on it we see a very simple image of a red angel wing and a sword laying across it. Sat as we spin around this knight, this holy crusader, again, just in front of her, laying on the ground in front of the altar, we see a small envelope. Finally, though, before we get to even focus any more on the face of this woman, the camera pulls all the way back, rushes across the bay, all the way through out towards the ocean. A large ship. I almost have this image of this man stood with his front leg up on that little raised area at the front of the ship, sort of standing with that heroic pose. Black breastplate, halberd in hand, and holding once more a note. But this time the note is open, held in his hands, and we zoom over the shoulder and we see written on the note, "Please help. The Gauntlight has awoken. Rin." We zoom down so that there is nothing else other than this note visible. And then the camera starts to zoom back out. And now we see all 4 notes arranged on that table. The deck of cards sat in the middle. And 4 people sat looking at each other, probably for the first time in years in some cases. Maybe just in days for others. Stood between 2 of the figures is a long, slender woman. Elven, again, also tiefling, but definitely older than the first that we saw. And it spins out to her face. She begins to speak. It's good to see you again, everyone. I am so glad all of you could make it. And some of you from some distance, yes?
Hi.
Muzran, it has been a while. You have taken an interesting path, it would seem.
Aye. Well, a lot happened those days down the mine. Just kind of reinforced some of the issues that I was aware of, some of the conversations I'd had with the guards here. And bless him, the guard captain. And all the troubles he had with things that were going on outside the town. Kind of had me troubled when I went back north to Kevros with my family. Yeah, kind of firmed up some ideas. So I'll come back as soon as I got that message from you.
What does Mosran look like then, JJ?
Mosron, I think a couple more years down the line, he's just past adolescence, into the start of a young adult for an orc. He is a full-blood orc. Fairly solid green, has a reasonable underbite that he hasn't bothered to deal with at all. But he has kept a surprisingly long set of locks, more so than some of the more armored individuals he trains with. Fairly tall, but then again, not entirely unsurprising for his species, and armored. As you say, the black chest plate, but other armored segments as well, trimmed in white, because he hasn't earned his full armor yet. He does indeed favour the halberd, but that is part of what he has learnt with the order that he has joined.
I mean, it will be fairly common knowledge. Do you want to explain what Mosran is trying to become?
Absolutely. It is effectively the very leading edge, and we'll have familiar notes to folks of the Hell Knights of the Order of the Nail. He hasn't earned the full armor yet, which is why what he's wearing is effectively an initiate's type grade, distinctive in feature. And again, with the totemic Order's weapon of a halberd. But there are certain trials that will wait him down the line that he knows are coming. So, yes.
So, Rin sort of looks around the rest of you and nods generally. I've noticed most of you around town. You each have grown so much. Obviously, Neffy, you stay with me most of the time, but you also do a few things of your own, and you do not ask questions, do I? No. Dear.
Horribly wise.
So, what does Neffy look like?
This. I mean, I've gone as close as I can with this because I'm really bad at remembering this stuff. So yeah, she has blue hair, which does have the purple in it as well, but it's more towards the blue. She's elven. She has ornate curled horns, which they have like some jewelry like hanging off them, adorning it, and things like that. She favors a little hand crossbow, which she always keeps on her hip, and often has a hand on it. And people know that it's not a threatening thing. She just does it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Rin continues to sort of look around the room, and yeah, you went away for a while and then have come back more determined than ever, I believe. You have earned a purpose, perhaps.
I think I found my purpose, yes. I've been lost for some time, and it's been difficult to understand society as it is right now, but I think I found where I should be, how I can integrate, and what is best for the world.
Finding your own direction is difficult. You have done this the hard way. Maybe Mosran has been given a direction, but you have walked a path, a hard path.
Some may say it's hard. I found it only natural to walk that path. It became the easiest choice for me.
So what does Anya look like?
Sure. So fairly long blonde hair, but it's all like plaited and tied back, so it's very much out of the way. Wearing fairly plain chainmail with a steel kite shield, and a quite long bastard sword on her back. She's fairly bulky. She's fairly tall for a human, a bit shorter than the most elves. So she's definitely more on the elfy side, but it is definitely a mixture of the two. Yeah, very strong, not particularly slender for an elf, and definitely more human traits on that side of things. Apart from that, it's chains inlaid with quite a lot of red, and it is all very practical. There's not very many intricacies, there's no jewelry, nothing like that. It is all war, and it is there for a purpose.
Okay. Rin looks one last time around and locks eyes with Phelan. Phelan, you are doing well. I've enjoyed every moment I've seen you. You are doing well with the druids, yes?
Aye. There's always more to learn, and there's always more folks that need help.
Indeed, indeed. But I see your companionship is growing well with your animal there. You are learning together, yes?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
What does Phelan look like? And his friend?
So Phelan is a relatively wiry dwarf, not quite as horizontally blessed as some of his kind. He's blonde-haired and bearded. He's usually looking fairly well groomed. He's friendly and open demeanor. He usually wears just practical outdoorsman's clothes, topped off with a wolfskin cloak and mantle.
Mm-hmm.
Usually has a shield slung on his back, and while he's got a practical knife and a sickle at his belt, they're considered tools rather than weapons.
Yep.
It's very rare to see him with one in hand in anger. And his companion, Olorin, is a rather sturdy young badger of the European variety, if anyone's going to look it up, who is not averse to a bowl of beer in the pub.
This seems fair. This seems about right for a druid's companion animal. I heartily approve of this. Not in real life, but still. What's you each haven't seen each other for, at least not interacted on this level for some time, but Rin is stood here sort of with you all, and she sort of looks down at her cards. It's almost like she's tempted to reach for them, but she just feels. You've seen her a little bit like this, Neffy, in the last few days. She seems troubled, very troubled by stuff that's going on. And she wrote these notes. Now, the interesting thing is, you've known that she's been sending out these notes very, very specifically. And they're almost timed, like she knew when she had to send them to get everybody to arrive today. Just whether or not it's she knew when perhaps Phelan wouldn't be busy. She literally put the letter in front of you right now. You were here already. She didn't need to ask you really in advance. You were here.
It still wrote me a letter.
But yeah, still wrote you the letter anyway. Still put it in front of you. This is not
Rin.
This is Rin. This is Rin we're talking
Yeah,
about.
true.
And she sort of stops and almost backs off from the table and sits down at a final chair that's in the back of the room. I have seen it. I've seen the light on the Gauntlight Tower. She is glowing again. What is this? I've read in over and over the stars, the cards, anything that I can get my hand on. Something dark is coming. The Gauntlight has awoken. Belcora, the story says she is dead, but I do not believe that anymore. 4 years ago, I sent you all to find something. We did not know what it was, but you came back with a dagger. An old dagger, a dagger marked by the ghosts from back then. And I told you then it would be important. I told you back then this was a sign of things that were to come. Well, I may well have been more right than I knew. I cannot trust anyone else in town. We have a connection. The 5 of us. Destiny has pulled us together. I am sure of it. I want to ask you a favor. Go to the Gauntlight. Find out where this glow is coming from. And that is all I can ask of you. But I believe now more than anything, your destiny is here. It has arrived. This is your time, all 4 of you. Is there anything more I can say to convince you? Or are you willing to do this errand for me?
Of course.
I mean, you never have to convince me. You just have to ask, and I say yes.
I understand that, my dear, but it is still worth asking.
From the time we've spent together, you know that I would do anything if you thought it was the best course of action. So I will do this task for you.
Anya, I have to admit I do not know what is the best course of action. I am guessing here a little. Nobody else believed me when I said I could start. I saw blue light coming from the Gauntlight. But it is there. I'm sure of it. And then the cards and the stars, they all say the same. They said the same sort of thing when the thirsty alpaca was destroyed. I told people it was going to happen. Nobody yeah, I did. And nobody believed me. Well,
If you have concerns, then it is my duty to investigate.
Hmm.
And I will gladly do this.
Then I bless you for this. I do.
I look at Moswin.
Let's face it. 2 words, please help. And I was asking my sergeant at arms to try and get a boat down here as fast as I could. Well, let's be honest, I'm not going to turn around and go back now and just be a churlish individual. Of course I'm here. Of course I'm happy to help. Let's get in it. Let's get finding out what the threat is. End of the day, if it's not been lit for how long again?
Hundreds of years.
Then it's probably going to be another problem. And if it's
Yeah.
linked to Belcora, and we all saw those ghosts, we know that something was going awry there. You know, as much as it was fun to see the fact that the kobolds have been leaping into it and doing themselves in, if there's a problem, it needs investigating. If it's a threat, it needs dealing with. If it turns out not to be a threat, it's a nice holiday.
And the sooner we see what's what, the sooner we can make some informed decisions about what to do about it.
Certainly. If there's any chance this is going to escalate, then the sooner we can nip it in the bud, the better.
Yep.
Then it is up to you. I do not feel that there is any urgency. You do not need to work this all out immediately. But I am glad I have at least reunited old friends once more. You have your options. You may forge out tonight if you wish, or take your time, find some space to sleep and rest.
I think.
Yes.
I can say I think a few drinks are in order to celebrate a friend's returning. But if it was my say, I think first light would be a sensible time to leave.
Then,
Yeah.
Then go enjoy your evening, and thank you, friends. Thank you once more. As I said, I have a bad feeling, and sometimes my bad feelings are wrong, but many times they are not. I am happy that you have all reunited.
I'd rather chase 100 wild geese than ignore one wolf.
So, if you would go look at your foundry, and I'm just going to swap the maps over on here. So you have the map of Otari here, and I will ping a couple of locations for you guys. You might be able to see that there are pin notes on here if you've got them turned on. If you haven't, don't worry too much about it. But you are currently sort of up at Rin's Wonders, just up here. You might be able to see on this map that this now has the actual ruins of the alpaca just there, and the Rowdy Rockfish, the sort of the laid-back tavern of the town is there, even though it's called the Rowdy Rockfish. This is where things are.
More ironic name.
Yep. The Crook's Nook. Most of you probably don't do too much around there. Neffy, you've probably been there a little bit, on and off.
Me?
Oh yes, you.
Yeah.
I would imagine you might have possibly a little bit been involved in that.
No one's ever seen me there.
But just to give you sort of a rough sort of outline, the map here is pretty big. If you just keep scrolling your way up to the north,
Oh wow, okay.
on this map, and just keep it going. Gauntlight is this all
Oh,
the way up
okay.
there. That is the Gauntlight. So you have to go through a little bit of a forest, a little bit of a wooded area, across a swamp.
Goody.
Oh, that's swamp. Oh, lovely.
That is a swamp, and then into so this sort of dark green here. Sorry for just jumping everybody around there a little bit too much. Let's not do that. That is the sort of wooded area, and then this sort of green and blue splotted part up at the top. That is most definitely a swamp. So there is a little bit of woodland, and then it just drops into this swamp. That swamp is known as the Fog Fen. And there is a reason for that. It is foggy quite a lot. There's sort of like there's quite a body of inland water, but it's quite warm. So the area gets kind of misty and foggy and a bit horrible around that sort of area. Generally speaking, people travel through the Fog Fen periodically quite often. But for the most part, people generally avoid the ruins of the Gauntlight. There's a little bit of a story. I believe you guys have probably read it if you've read the player's guide. There's a little bit of a nursery rhyme that goes with this place. I'll see if I've actually wrote it down anywhere when I was doing this. Yeah. When the fog is creeping and the moon is low, when the town is sleeping, Gauntlight starts to glow. That's when she arises for her midnight lunch. Naughty kids are prizes for her teeth to crunch. But if you obey me and obey the rules, you're safe from Belcora. She just eats the fools. That is a nursery rhyme in Otari.
Of course it is.
Nursery rhyme. Sure.
So you've got this just a general sort of outline of how it is. So you've got the option here really of what you want to do for the evening. You do know the owner of the Rowdy Rockfish. You met her a few years ago, which is Brelda Venkervale, the dwarf that you saw during the festival, which was in your sort of first adventure in Otari. And she owns that bar. Now, she didn't used to. When you knew her first, and those of you that have been in town know about this event, but her son, who used to own the tavern, Laster Venkervale, one night, he was quite well known for enjoying walks at night and things like that. But one night he walked out of the tavern, and was seen effectively being escorted out of town by some robed figures, and he never came back. And it was a little out of character, but everybody kind of just thought, oh, he's snapped. He's gone off somewhere else. He's joined some sort of monastery somewhere or something, because he's finally lost it. And his mum effectively took over looking after the tavern for him. So yeah, that's kind of your main one, your main tavern. You could sort of ask around there for lodgings. I think it's fair to say that that Phelan and Anya, and in fact Neffy, probably have their own little place somewhere, either up with the druids in their camps that are outside of town, or probably lodgings in the cathedral, or just a general house that you've kind of worked your way up to sort of vaguely owning, Neffy. And I'd imagine, Mosran, you're probably the only one that really needs lodgings here, but I'd imagine you could probably work it out between you how you want to do that. Neffy's probably got a bit of space somewhere, or something along those lines. So I'm not going to really quibble too much about you all having to pay for the tavern for lodgings, because I don't think that's really a thing. But by all means, if you wish to, should we head to a tavern?
Yes.
Tavern's good.
Couple of cups before the night.
Mm-hmm.
So you head to the Rowdy Rockfish. It's a rather nice little tavern, and get a bit of music going. There we go. I can certainly hear it if nobody else can. It's always a good sign because I can at least have it sort of running for everybody else. So the Rowdy Rockfish is a nice simple tavern. It's quite large, quite well set up. It's what you'd expect really from a sort of tavern in a quaint medieval town. Decent bar space. You can hear a kitchen scullery being worked in the back, obviously turning over some decent food. There's a fairly simple bar across the front with kegs set up behind it for various sorts of simple dark ales and things like that. As you walk in, Relda sort of looks up, notices the sort of three of you and nods and sort of ushers you over to a table, and then Mosrin kind of comes in behind and she's
Looking entirely like a problem.
I pull him down slightly so he's a bit shorter.
I assume he's with you. Yes? Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We can find some space then. That's not a problem. Not a problem. Right. What can I get for you?
4 mugs and a bowl, please.
Oh, not again. Okay.
Oh, he's well behaved.
He's well behaved most of the time. Most of the time.
I was going to say that again just speaks a whole story of itself.
You just need to know when to cut him off. It's fine.
Let's put it this way, we'll go and hide the potatoes.
Mostly when he's had too much, he just lies on his back and waves his little paws in the air.
Well, yes.
It's adorable.
We basically do have to get him a bit drunk to get him to that point, though, don't we? Yes.
Yeah, we're not having that much tonight.
I'm not sure if that's better or worse. Anyway, yes. You're a larger table, I guess. Then here you are, my dears. You all sit down, and it's been a long time, Mosrin.
It has.
You've bulked out a bit.
Filled out, absolutely. Aye.
Well,
See,
You've been
like
keeping up on your running.
Yeah. That stood me very well compared to some of the other initiates, I'll have you know.
You know that
Good.
Cardio works.
now that you started talking, she sort of just backs away and disappears. And later, within the next few minutes, there's just a drink in front of each of you. You're not entirely sure how it got there, but it's just been it's just like it's appeared out of thin air. And you can tell that Brelda's sort of popping around and doing various sort of bits and pieces and checking various sorts of things out. You get this table and you are all sat, and by all means, talk amongst yourselves.
As you were saying, yeah, the running backwards and forwards that we did down the mines, to be honest, did kind of stand me in good stead. It was a long old walk that I ended up taking when I got to Kebros. Took myself off out to the outside of town. A couple of interesting bits and pieces going on. I got to thinking. Ended up taking a long old walk up to the Citadel that was on the outskirts of town, but then again, by outskirts, I think it was the best part of a day's walk. So it took a fair amount of time to get there. And there's various bits and pieces of trying to actually get in and prove you're worthy of getting in. And a lot of that seemed to be go away, do something, and come back here. Only you have to do it quick.
Sounds like one small favour, and after another, and just trying to make you running around until eventually they say, "Okay, fine, we've bullied you enough. Come on in."
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
I
Testing
mean,
your
I just want to
conviction.
clarify. Have they actually paid you for these things? Because if not, I feel like we need to unionize you.
They haven't paid me, but then again, I haven't paid them for food, for arms, for training.
So I guess like you're doing services in response to like food and board. I guess that is a
Yeah.
reasonable trade.
Aye. And at some point in the line, some point down the way, when I've got a little bit more experience under my belt, I mean, that's part of the reason why, I was released by my sergeant at arms to come down here, was to get a bit more world experience than maybe some of the other local lads have got. There'll be a point in time where I'm making money with them. At the end of the day, all the now are as much mercenary as they are anything else. So they train you for free, and if you stick with it long enough, if you survive long enough, and if you pass a couple of the trials, there's good coin in it, as well as dealing with all the problems.
I guess you pay levies to your sergeants and whatnot.
Aye. Trickle down.
Well,
What have you been up to? I think you've got a few more bits and pieces of kit than I saw you with last.
so I've been wondering for a while what to do with me. I arrived on this island, this town, not really understanding what life really meant. And I guess the mines opened my eyes a bit, and I began to understand actually, that there's a need for people to actually stand up and see what's in the world and actually resolve issues and not just cower behind tables.
Aye.
And I guess that's where I found Bagthail. And from there, well, training to become more noble, more brave, get better with a sword, get stronger in person, get stronger in mind. And that's where I am now. I spend most of my time with the cathedral. Obviously, again, similar to yourself, I'm there for board and food and do services within the cathedral itself. But outside of that, I've been training with the militia and trying and strengthen up myself tactically.
Makes sense. How's the old captain of the guard doing? I imagine you might have bumped into him once or twice, Neffy? Or you managed to keep away from alongside
You assume that I've bumped into the guards. I feel like you have some sort of view about me, and I don't know where it's come from because no one has ever seen me do anything that I shouldn't do.
Doesn't mean that
Yes,
you're not
I
doing
suspect that's
anything.
factually accurate.
That's the one. No one's ever seen you do it, and that is probably part of the reason why you may
I
have
don't
a
like
good
that you all saw through that so quickly. At this
Oh,
point,
come
Neffy just
on.
disappears into the shadows of the tavern. She's
I've had to
literally
find
just
a few.
gone.
I've had to find a few wounds at the Crook's Nook. Nook's Crook.
Yeah. I'm not going to go near there. I might get into bother if I go there.
Neffy's already there.
Just silently walked out the door.
These people are too much do-gooders for me.
It's concept of unionizing.
Just giving him ideas.
Unionizing a mercenary company can only end well.
Yeah, I can totally see various people getting a severe hump about that. I like the idea. And I don't remember. It's been a couple of years. Do I remember a badger? I don't remember a badger. I don't think I remember a badger.
Oh, he's been following me around for a couple of years now. It was after you went off on your travels.
Fair enough.
No, I've mostly been wandering the woods, and Phelan is actually combing his beard at the table.
This works.
Yeah, mostly tending to axe wounds from the lumberjacks.
Mm.
They get a bit clumsy.
That's up at Giant's Wheel, wasn't it? Is where they.
Oh, that's where it all comes down. You get some people trying to ride the logs for fun. It's a bit too dynamic for my tastes.
But that just sounds idiotic, if nothing else.
Well, yes, it's mostly the young'uns.
Mm.
You
And
know,
Neffy.
Enthusiastic.
It's normally Neffy
Neffy's
leading
still
the
doing it.
charge.
Nephew's the reason for half the axe wounds because people are just going, "What is that? Whap! Oh, my leg."
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
Oh dear, brilliant. So, I imagine you quite happily spend the night. I mean, Neffy possibly disappears, as she said, into the shadows every now and again.
I've gone to go and win some games to get some coin, and then I come back,
Come back with.
buy a round, go off, win some games, come back.
Oh dear. So yeah, other than the fact that Neffy keeps on vanishing from your sight periodically, you have quite a nice, open and relaxing evening, getting through sort of multiple rounds of drinks and re-establishing sort of old connections. It feels like home again. It feels like those days when you were younger and you were here just after you all turned of age. The adventures, they all come flooding back. The mine that you went through, the small cavern, the small caverns that you found at the back of the mines with the kobolds, and then even further back from that, when the small hunting party attacked your festival that was going on at the 12 stone pond, just on the cliffside at the top of Otari. You remember all of these things, and you almost sort of forget why you have come back together. But Rin's words still sit in your mind, and you can hear her words and what she said about the Gauntlight coming back, and that old nursery rhyme that you keep on hearing around town about Belcora. As you get through the evening, you decide to part to your various different places. Brelda kind of looks at you and nods, and almost accepting the fact that perhaps this time you're not going to pay, that this was a special night for all of you, and she waves you away when you offer to pay the fees.
Fair enough.
And
Not argue.
as you step out of the tavern, I'd like all of you to roll a perception check. Now, normally I will stick with the sort of general, you don't do this sort of thing, this is supposed to be a secret check. But for this one, I would like a little bit of an active kind of check for all of you to have a first little dice roll of the evening and see where you can what you can come up with.
14 and 5, 19.
19 for Mosrin. Neffy?
24.
24.
Oh.
24.
Yep.
19. What's my perception? I'm good at this.
This is always the bit where you gotta dig through your character sheets.
I'm trying to find where my
So in Foundry,
ability scores are.
Well, you don't need to go to your ability scores for perception. So on Foundry, if you open up your character sheet, on that sort of red banner down the left hand side, the perception is buried in there.
Got it. 23.
23.
26.
So it's pretty much everybody apart from Mosrin. The night, as I said,
All times.
Yeah,
as I said,
yep.
it's dark and it's overcast. But just at this sort of moment, I think Mosrin might have been in his cups, perhaps a little bit too much, and he's feeling maybe
A little bit more
we'll
relaxed.
We'll see he's relaxed and he's come back. But as you step out the front door of the Rowdy Rockfish, you are almost looking straight up towards where the Gauntlight is. And Neffy and Phelan and Anya, for the first time in a while, you decide to actually look over that way. And just for the briefest of moments, you think you see a flicker of blue light. But then the clouds cross over again, and you can't see anything.
I don't think Rin was wrong.
So it wasn't just me that saw that then. I'm not.
No.
Rin's never wrong.
I'll go with that then.
Monstrin, you saw that, right? Didn't you?
Sorry, I was just enjoying the locale. It's been a while. I've been stuck inside Citadel, for crying out loud. Most of what I see is stone, and then when it's not stone, it's a mountainside. I'm either running up it or running down it.
How long were you on that boat?
Then I'm running back up it.
How long were you on that boat for, Martin?
Oh, well, how long was I? Sorry, say again. What?
How long were you on that boat for?
Goodness gracious, it'd be the best part of 2 weeks on the boat.
Yes.
Back to my old days.
More or less, especially seeing as they would have had to have stopped off on various sort of bits on the way. It won't just have been a boat from Osrin. It would have been a proper sort of
Sure.
A trader.
boat. So almost certainly you've been dropped off here as they've gone on to Absalom to actually do proper sort of work and the rest for the order. So yeah, you part ways for the night. Go your various different ways and settle in for what you now, all of you, especially with that last conversation, feel could be one of the last easy night's sleep you have. You know that there's something going on there. Rin isn't lying. He has seen something happening at the Gauntlight. And that's where we're going to take a break, because that's been just around about an hour. So what we're going to do is we'll take a break ourselves. We're going to get some drinks and all the rest of it. You won't notice on YouTube because I'm going to cut all of this and put it all together. However, if magic of YouTube. If you are on podcast, though, if I have gone the whole podcast route, this will be the end of the first episode, and actually what we'll do is we'll split the podcast into halves. So that's the way we're going to work on it, and that's how we're going to do it. So we're going to disappear. YouTube you won't notice. Podcast you're going to have to wait a week. Tough. It's just the way I feel right now. Anyway, yeah, so we'll stop right there.
Sounds fine.